Okay, can you just take me back to like when your creative journey began?
So it definitely hasn't been a linear path by any means, but I've been, taking photos for quite a long time since I was young. When I was young, me and my friends skated a lot, and so I would make a lot of skate videos, and like that was kind of what most of like what I was taking photos of, revolved around. And then when I was in college, I had I had a film camera that I would use occasionally, but it was kind of in, it was, the early 2000s. And so it was a transition from film to digital. And so film places were slowly kind of like exiting and getting more and more expensive. But the digital wasn't really quite there yet, like the quality.
Okay.
So I kind of fell out of it for quite a few number of years. And then I was working at the university club, and I was the membership experience manager there. And so so I was putting on like tons of events every month. I was doing all the member communications. I was doing like all of our emails. I was running all of our social media platforms.
Gotcha.
And I was the point of contact with our photographer. And so eventually, like, I became pretty close with him, and he's, helped me out a lot on my journey. And I kind of just slowly phased into that position. And so for the last year, or for like the last year and a half of my tenure there, I was the principal photographer, and that's kind of how I like journeyed into that.
I know you work with events and you also do like food photography. How did you get into that?
I got into events, I guess, because what I was doing at the club, I was putting on all the events. I was planning and executing them, and then also doing all like the social media coverage. And so I basically was just shooting events like all the time. And so I just shot like hundreds of events at the club.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of like, same with food. And I've worked in restaurants my entire adult life. So like if there's like any industry where I'm like, that's my industry, is like the food and beverage industry.
Gotcha.
And like hospitality and that. And so that's really where I feel comfortable. And so it's like, it's very easy for me to get back into a kitchen and like work around. I know how to like function in those spaces. Like those spaces I'm comfortable in. And so that's like a little bit of like, I guess maybe my attraction to that, and then just like my comfort level. And also too, it is like it's an actual piece of like the photography landscape that you can monetize, and that there is like pretty consistent, steady work for.
Yeah.
And so that I think is kind of why I've like stuck in those lanes as far as like professionally, or like what I'm actually getting like hired or paid to do. All the other photography that I do is just, avenues that I'd like to explore, but not things that I'm like currently getting, paid for or whatever. So. Gotcha.
Now, I know you said like you've kind of grown up around the food industry. How does that go about with you, like finding new clients? Like, are you mostly using your connections? Do you reach out to them?
So almost all of my work is done through word of mouth.
Okay.
And a lot of that is on my pre-existing communities, or the communities that I've established as a non-photographer. And so, for example, I know so many chefs, and I know so many restaurant professionals and wine professionals in San Diego, because I have that history of working with them in a different capacity. Like being in my role at the university club, I was very much tied into the community there. I was kind of like the member liaison, essentially. And so I would do a lot of collaborations, and I would do a lot of like problem solving with our members. And the relationships that I have established at the club when I was in that role have like definitely bled over into my photography side. Like every time I go shoot an event at the club, I come off with like 3 or 4 leads.
Nice.
And so it's these people that I know from this different capacity that I'm able to like, use my personal relationship or my professional relationship with to like, kind of like cross that bridge.
Amazing.
And so,
Yeah, it sounds like you've done a really good job with like meshing your two worlds together and finding people organically, which is great. Do you ever reach out to people if you're like interested in working on a project?
yes, I do. Especially like early. So I guess, I've been doing this freelance for a year now. And in the beginning, my portfolio was really like kind of stacked really heavy with like not like one type of content, but it was like all like the stuff I had shot for the club for the most part.
Okay.
And so when I first was starting out, like I was very focused on expanding my portfolio and like kind of honing in on my actual like photography skills and my competency as a photographer to be able to deliver the images that I was happy with. And so for the first few months, I did a lot of like volunteer things, but they were for like I shot 11 events for the San Diego Food and Wine Festival, and they're like definitely like a big deal festival. And so those things I was able to work really quickly with a lot of like high level professional chefs and like some really big names and really influential people. And that was, connections through my network. And, even though I wasn't getting like paid for it, it was paying me in that experience was paying me in my portfolio. And for that moment, it worked really well. And it was like one of those sacrifices I was willing to make early in my career. Like that is not where I'm at currently.
Yeah.
But it like when you're starting out, sometimes you might need like you can't really like fake a restaurant in your house. Like you can like I don't know, or like maybe you can't like make a dish that looks that good or whatever, or you don't have like the dishware. But like you just need that environment to shoot in. You like just need the opportunity to shoot so you can get it. And like otherwise, it's just not going to happen. So I do feel like there is, for a lot of people at that beginning stage, a lot of reaching out and doing like trades or, things where it benefits both of you, but you have to kind of like, you have to build your portfolio. You have to get all that stuff done.
Yeah, that's super important, right? Because that's the first thing clients look at is your portfolio. And if you have like a lot of examples and a lot of businesses that you've worked with, it just creates this like level of credibility and trust. With a lot of artists who are freelancers, I think like there is no base starting point. It's hard to figure out what like the right packages to give to your clients. And I think that does take a little bit of time to figure out like, hey, this works.
100%.
You know what I mean? And this is what clients are comfortable with. Do you have any like tips on maybe trying to like what's like the best way someone could maybe try to figure that out?
I would say talk to other people, to other people that are offering similar things and ask them what their prices is, just to even get like a ballpark figure.
Yeah.
There's also a lot of like this is where like AI software can kind of come in handy, where you're like, hey, like what is the average pricing for these things? What is like, the average deliverable? This is my market. This is my, what I'm shooting for. And it does get a little bit more complicated when you're talking like intellectual property with images, and like whether or not your client is going to be using those for marketing purposes or for like, like what your client is using them for and what they're monetizing them for will also reflect what you can charge. So like, for example, if you're shooting something for like Coca-Cola or like, like a company that you're like, this is an advertising campaign. It's just talk to people.
I think even seasoned like videographers, photographers are still figuring that out. Cause like it changes, like the market changes. You got to stay competitive. There's always like new creators coming in. So yeah, that's really interesting. But I think that's good advice in like where they can start out.
Like starting out, I also think that a lot of people will undervalue themselves.
Yeah.
And they'll undercharge. I mean, I know that I'm certainly guilty of that. where you feel like you're not at the level to charge that much, where that is your own mental thought you have to get over, and where the perception from the outside is totally different.
Yeah.
And so I feel like that is also like one important thing about,
Right.
and like when you're starting off, maybe like you are working with people that they don't have as much of a budget, and you have to kind of like maybe be flexible and like, work with them and like figure out something that works for both of you, just so that you're getting the experience, or you're getting that like gig, they're getting what they need, but you're also not like underselling yourself or like delivering more than, you're not like undercutting your own value.
Yeah.
But yeah, just have confidence.
The return on investment is so big, and I think like you need to remember that when you're pricing. And like you said, you do have to be confident in your work because you've worked hard on this.
And the thing too is where I feel like I'm at the age where I've seen social media go from this thing that was kind of like not like a joke, but it wasn't that long ago where it's like, oh, you're a social media manager, what are you, like a kid like posting selfies on some account, or
Yeah.
like social media is advertising now.
Yes,
and like
absolutely.
it is very much a monetized field, and it is also very much how businesses, like every and any business has to have a social media presence.
Yeah, it's their brand identity. What you put out there on your social media is a representation of what your brand is, and you got to make sure that stuff looks good.
Yep.
And it's a lot of content that you need.
Definitely. Definitely.
Yeah.
But and that's where I guess one piece of advice where like I'm really is kind of like hitting personally, like for me pretty hard right now, is just the fact of like that's where you bring in these other skill sets or these other ways to sell yourself, or these other where it's like, okay, like here's like, you don't need to like necessarily like if this isn't what you want to do, but if you're bringing it to the table, where it's like, okay, here's like a comprehensive social media strategy, like for you to use with these images, or like this is the purpose, this is the story that I'm trying to tell.
Yeah.
Right now, especially with social media, it's all about the story.
Yeah.
And if you can use your other kind of like, I guess like maybe the non-creative skills, or like your more like business acumen, to be able to present those things more as like not just pretty images, or not just like art, like these are your digital assets that this is how you monetize, this is how you make it worth what you're paying me.
Yeah, that's a really, really good point, because you can give a company strategy and like how to use those photos. I think that's like a really great way to sell yourself.
The freelance thing, the hustle is the hardest part in my opinion. Like the photography or like the art part is the easy part. That's the fun part. It's like, that's the enjoyable part where you get to go and you get to shoot your thing and do, be creative. The hard part comes in on like the business side, or like the, actually getting clients. Like getting work is so much harder than the actual work itself.
Yeah.
And it takes just as much, if not more work to get the work.
Right.
And so like if you can do things like put yourself on a retainer with a restaurant, for example, where you're doing monthly, you're just getting paid X, you have your X number of deliverables for that month, kind of like almost like a buying in bulk, where you have consistent income. You don't have to like, you can keep the other hustle going, but you don't have to rely on one-off shoots all the time. Yeah, so there's like all sorts of different ways to like kind of work your angles.
Yeah.
But I think it's just like right now in this day and age, it's kind of about having different income streams as well.
Right.
And like on that, it's like you can't really be just a photographer anymore. Like you have to kind of be a hybrid shooter, where like you have to kind of like, if you can offer video, you're like, A, you can make, a lot more money, and B, like a lot of people aren't like, they're like, oh, you can't do video, then we'll just get some guy that can do video and photos, and we'll pay him for both because we need both.
Right, and it's so much easier to work with one person. So it's like, let's see, how can you really add more value to yourself? Okay, so let's say someone is starting out, maybe they're just shooting for fun right now, and they want to like really seriously consider making some money and turning it into a career, where should they start?
If you have a phone, you can start. You know, you don't. Some of like the people are making millions of dollars just using their phones. You know, where it doesn't have to be. You have to. You know, granted, like it depends on what you're trying to shoot. You know, but I would say that kind of like differentiate between like what you like to shoot or what you are enjoy or passionate about and what you can actually monetize.
Okay.
Because so for example, like if you like to shoot, if you're like the most amazing like landscape photographer, that's great. But like who's going to pay you for those photos? Or like how are you going to monetize that sphere? Or like, you know, compared to like if you do headshots or,
Right.
you know, if you do like weddings, you know, like, so I also think like right now the field is kind of changing a lot and there are certain things where AI, like, you know, I like in, you know, doing a lot of research kind of on like where the market's going or like where like the industry is going. You know, like there's certain types of photography that are, may get kind of phased out a little bit. Like, you know, maybe like a little more brand photography or, you know, but there's other things like you can never have AI replicate your wedding photos,
Right.
you know, or like that event or like this fundraiser or this charity or like, you know, there's certain things that will never be like replaced in that. And that's the human side of things. It's that like moment.
Yeah.
You can't just, I mean, I'm sure you can put in a prompt and have them like generate the image, but it's not an authentic image. Like being authentic is so important at this moment because right now we're just in this age of like disinformation. We're in this age where you can't really tell like if people are real or not even. And so like, I would say figuring out where you want to go, figuring out the stuff that you like to do, but you might not necessarily be trying to like make that your career path, but still using those things to practice or, you know, to like, you know, get your chops in and like just kind of start where you're at. You know, if you don't have a big budget, just start low budget and just start making, start creating, start doing, and go from there. You know, you can kind of start gradually chipping away at things and just kind of like getting your inspirations or like having your end goals, but just like starting from the bottom and just working, and like you never know where that path is going to take you.
Yeah.
And so I just like biggest advice, just start doing it.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
don't, like regardless of how you feel about it, just start.
Yeah, put it out there. When should someone invest in equipment? Or do you think that's, like, what do you think about that? Do you think it's necessary right up from the beginning? Or can they hold off on it a little bit?
It's not important until it 100% is, you know?
Yeah.
I feel like for me, when I've had to upgrade my equipment, it's like, okay, like I'm doing this event and like I need this thing for this.
Okay.
And so it's like there's certain like focal lengths. Like if you're shooting like a speaking event and you're at the back of the room, you're gonna need something to like zoom in on your speaker.
Yeah.
And so like it's a lot of it is kind of like for me like necessity based.
Okay.
And if I need something, then that's kind of like when I'm like, okay, I guess I gotta bite the bullet and like get this.
Get this equipment.
You know.
Gotcha. So, can you walk me through your process a little bit?
Even before walking in, it's really nice to have like some sort of shot list. And with like, I kind of have like a running list in my head. And so the first thing I do when I get in is I check in with like my point of contact. And so like for me, it's like identifying the VIPs, identifying like the people that like they need a picture of, or like the influential people that they like really want to be featured, or like just like, okay, make sure you get something from these people. And then just kind of like checking the room and like kind of like walking the space to see where your good shots might be, or like where your angles might be, just kind of like familiarizing yourself, just taking a step back and like kind of looking at it like big picture. And then like with events, a lot of it is like, so sometimes once it starts, you're just like really going.
Yeah.
And so for me, I kind of have this like checklist where I'm like, okay, like I got to get this type of photo. I have to have this type of photo. Like I need photos of people posed, you know, where they're like, you know, smiling for the camera. Like I need photos of people that are like candid. I need people like doing this thing. I need people doing that thing. I need like X number of the shots of the speaker. And so it's kind of like going through and like checking off that list throughout the night,
Right.
because everything moves so quickly with
Yeah.
social media. So you really have to like give them something to kind of use almost immediately.
Right.
And so oftentimes it'll be like, okay, here's like 5-10 photos, or here's a couple photos you can send your client and be like, okay, you can throw these on your stories. Here's like a little sampling of like some selects.
Gotcha.
And you can like kind of be like, okay, here, I'll have everything else due in a couple days, or whatever your timeline may be.
What do you think like someone can do to really stand out?
It's about setting yourself apart in the way that you can tell the story, because that's really what people are looking for right now, is like the story behind the image, or the image is creating a fully formed like narrative. And so just be authentic. And you know, so much of any business, regardless of the industry, regardless of the job, is about your personality.
Yeah.
And it's about your interactions with people. It's about having a strong community.
Yeah.
And those things are so important. So much of an artist's journey is networking. You know, be enjoyable and pleasurable to work with. Set yourself apart by being yourself, because that's ultimately what's gonna like sell you oftentimes.
Okay, that's good advice. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, and Jonathan, when did you realize that art was more than a hobby to you?
I think I realized it when I saw that it was actually feasible. You know, so when I was working at the university club, like, and I was folded into that role of principal photographer, and I was actually making money with it every month. And I was getting the response I was getting from like a variety of other people, either creatives or just like other like corporate people, or like people above me, people below me, like the way that people were responding to my work. I like really like kind of pursued a non-creative career while I was like getting this going. And eventually I was just like, you know, forget all that. I'm gonna focus on this and like actually make it happen. The seeing that it could be a reality, having that little like touch or that little taste, and then being like, okay, well, sink or swim, buddy. Like,
Yeah.
you know.